Hello guys, welcome back. So this is the part 2 of SQLite with Flutter tutorial. And in the previous video, we have seen how to integrate SQLite with Flutter app, and the wallpaper app which we have built had included the create and read operations. And today in this video, we will be implementing the delete as well as the update operations. So to demonstrate the update operation, we will be using the concept of favorites and favorites list. So we'll be basically making a list of favorite items, and each wallpaper can be marked as favorites. And when we do that, it will just go and basically we are turning the favorites flag into one, which will be zero by default. Also, we'll be changing the database, the table which we had created, wallpapers. We'll be adding a new column for that called as favorites. Favorite status or something like that, so that initially it will be zero, and later on when we click and make it as our favorite wallpaper, it will turn into one. So based on that one or zero, we can distinguish between is it a favorite wallpaper or not, and we can build a separate list as today we'll be implementing the delete operation, where we will be able to delete an item from the database. Say if you do not want a wallpaper, you can delete that. So the entire record will be deleted from the database. Without any further ado, let's get started with the UI. So I'll quickly build the UI for our main page. When we click on a wallpaper, we have to go to a main page, right? So in the main page, there won't be much fancy stuff. If you want, you can include more items. But for this tutorial, since it is an SQLite tutorial, I won't be adding more of the UI elements. It will be simple, basic buttons and text fields with an image. That's it. So let's get started with the UI. We have made a new widget, which is nothing but a stateful widget. That will be our wallpaper page. Basically, this will be our main page. When we click on this card, we will be taken to this page. From home page, there will be list of wallpaper cards, and for each wallpaper card, we are passing its own data model. So take a scenario of this case. In this case, the card is sunset card. So inside sunset card, we will be holding the object of the data model of sunset, right? So inside this wallpaper card, we'll be having the data, and on the click of this card, I have wrapped the card with equal so that we get an on tap property, and I'm just pushing the new page, which is the wallpaper page, along with the data which we have. So we are passing the data, which is nothing but the URL, and also the ID, which, if you remember, we had given over here in the database. Inside the database, we have specified something called as an ID. So in the backend, it would have generated 0, 1, 2, and so on. That ID will be having inside the object. If I click on this object class, so basically we will be having ID, URL, title, category, and description. And now, if I click on this card, as you can see, it will go to the wallpaper page, which is nothing but this page. So when I click on this, we will be taken to this particular page, which is nothing but the main page of wallpaper. We will be having this favorites. When you click on this, it will mark this as a favorite wallpaper, and also we can delete. So let's get started. First of all, let's implement the delete, and then we'll need to alter the table name for favorite function to implement the favorite function. So now let's just get started with the delete. In the wallpaper page, first we have to import the SQL libraries. One with this, and along the way, let's implement the rest. So this will be a future of void. Let's just define a function which will delete this function. So say delete wallpaper. This function would be an async function, since it will take a few milliseconds to delete the item from our database. It's an asynchronous operation, so we'll have to wait. So as you remember, first we'll have to get the reference for database. This equals, and now if you remember, we had created the singleton pattern, so by which we'll get a single access point, global access point to our instance database. So we'll say get database, and now it's giving an underline because I haven't used our keyword. Since this particular the process of getting an instance would take some time, so we'll have to wait. And now we can basically just call a database.delete. I made a typo over here, it has to be database. So we can call database.delete on that, and delete will take the table name and a where clause. I'll get into that. So first we will be specifying the table name is nothing wallpaper. Wallpaper is the table name, and then it will take a where clause. Basically, where clause is just a condition to identify which exact record should be deleted. So this condition would be based on primary key, since primary key is basically used to identify the records uniquely. So we will be like ID is equal to question mark. You can specify over here itself directly the ID, but that's not a good way in terms of security, in terms of SQL injection attacks. So we'll be specifying there's something called as where args. It will take a list of items and it will substitute to the question marks, respective question marks. So here we have only one. We will be needing the ID. So the ID would be, and we'll just it's supposed to be an integer. Let's see. So when we click on wallpaper model, yeah, it's an integer, so ID would be integer. We will say int ID, and this ID will be over here. Perfect. So this ID will be substituted over here when we call delete based on an ID, and that would delete our item where the ID is satisfied. Say if you give ID as 0, the 0 item would be deleted, right? That is the word sunset. And if the ID was 1, the 1th element would be deleted, and so on. We won't be hard coding the ID, of course, because when we call delete from the delete on tab, I have written delete wallpaper. Okay, so now we will be calling the delete wallpaper function with the ID. Now you might be wondering where this ID comes from. If you remember, I had passed this wallpaper model from the previous on tab, so we'll be holding the ID inside this. When you put a dot on this, okay, sorry, we have to use feature dot since it is a straightforward dot ID. So now we got the ID of this particular card, which is nothing but the sunset card. The ID would be 0 in this case, and it would delete that. Since this will take some time, we can implement a loader for this. So let's just say bool loading, delete is loading is equal to false. Initially it will be false. Initially this will be false. And now before calling this function, we will set it to true. And after this call, we will have to await. Since it is await, it will tell me to add async keyword to the function. And after that, we will say, we'll just copy paste this and set it to false. So when the deletion process is happening, instead of the text, we can just show if it is not loading, then show the text. If it is loading, then of course we have to show circular progress indicator. So this should handle that, and also the user should not keep on clicking delete. Once the deletion happens, he'll have to be routed back. So if it is not loading, then he can delete it. If not, if it is loading, then just not do anything. So this is for the deletion. We forgot to get the callback. So after deletion, we have to call this page. I mean, we have to query the database again for the new items in which the deleted item won't be there. And it will say constructor should be added. I mean, this parameter was missing, right? And now it will ask for a callback, and the callback would be nothing but our function. Since this is getting called from wallpaper card, we will have to pass it from over here. And this is just a simple app, so I'm following this method. If your app is a bit complicated, you will have to follow certain state management patterns, right? You cannot just keep sending callbacks through the widgets. To make things easy, I'm just using this. So to get the callback, we'll have to use widget.callback, and also to the card we will be passing the callback. Now the callback, okay, the function would be the query function, which is nothing but the get data list. So when we pass this, we pass the function to card, and then from the card we pass it to the main page. So we will get the function where we can query the database again after the deletion. We will be calling that. We will be calling that over here. So we have to do let's call the query function, and after that we can just do navigator dot pop context. So that will come back though, so it will delete this. Say for example flowers. This is test now. So when I click on delete, it will delete. Yeah, see, it's working. So it got deleted, as well as it navigated back towards the first page. So if I click on delete Fox, it would delete the Fox card from the database, so that right now we only have one particular entry in the database. So this is the zeroth ID, which has the zeroth ID, and now if I click on delete, it will query the database and it will match. Say for example, the ID would be 0 over here, and the ID of 0, it will just find the database. It will query the database where the ID would be equal to 0. That would be nothing but the sunset card, and it would delete the card, the old record, so that when I click on delete, it shows empty because I have deleted all the 3 items which were there in the database. And that sums up the delete operation. Now we'll be moving towards the update operation. So before we go to the update operation, we will have to alter the table structure. We will have to add a new column for the table. To do that, we have to go to our database, and over here, I had actually forgot to add this, but like I said, whenever we change the structure of the table or the schema, we have to increment the version. And this would be is favorite, is, or else, let's just say FAV. So if this FAV, it would be an integer. It would be an integer. If this integer is 0, which would be by default, while adding a new item, we would just consider it as 0. The favorite is 0. Initially, it won't be a favorite wallpaper, but later on, when we click on the star button, it would just update the favorite status to 1 instead of 0. So let's do that. So this should, so when I rerun the app, it should create a new database with the table, a new table with this structure. So this would be added. And now when I add a new item, I'll just add a new item quickly. We have a couple of things left to do in the add section. So whenever we are going to add a new wallpaper, we usually send these many values, but now we have an extra one, which is FAV, which will be 0 initially. And also when the data changes, the data structure changes, we will also have to change the data model. Because the previous data model did not have the favorite integer, right? We will have to go to the JSON.dart website and then get a new one and get a new data model which will have a favorite status integer. So let's do that. Once we have this, we can give the class name. The class name would be the same as before, which was wallpaper model. And now we will paste it. We'll get the new model. So in this, we will be having this part in favorite. I can just replace this part. Rest everything should be the same. And when we are adding a new one, we will add it as 0 by default. It won't be favorite. Okay, since we have altered the table, we will have to just uninstall and reinstall the app, then again run it once again, so that new schema is created from the beginning. So I'll go ahead and do that. Yeah, so here I have the details of a wallpaper, which is nothing but a tree. And when I add it, as you can see, I have just printed out the result of the getting list, when we are getting list. So that would be favorites equal to 0. So this is the new changes which we had made. And now we will go to the main page. So here we are just passing the details from this page, this card to this page. But now we will have to make a query to get the details based on the ID, because when we click on favorites, we have to query the database again to get and check if the favorites is 1 or 0. So just go to this and let's make a function to get details. Get wallpaper. So it will also take an ID, and instead of delete, we move to query wallpapers, where ID is this, which we're getting from the function call, and the query would return as a list of map, right? So that we will initialize to a list of map of dynamic. Say result, and this give an error because I haven't used a keyword. And now after this, now we will have to remove this part. Instead of getting it from the previous card, we will just query it over here and set state to this. So we have created a instance which is null right now, and here also it's giving an error. We will fix that. We can just remove widget wherever widget is there. Let's just remove that. I'm pressing Ctrl F2 after highlighting, remove all at once. Since this is VS Code, it gives me a shortcut. And now, okay, so we have removed that. When calling wallpaper page, we have to also remove this. We are not passing it anymore, but instead we will be querying the database. Okay, by mistake I removed widget. Here widget keyword is needed because this is still coming from the previous card. Now after getting, as you know, we can just create the wallpaper model over here. Say local wallpaper object equals, and now if you remember, we had the constructor, this has to be wallpaper model dot from JSON, so that JSON would be this result. But since it is a list, it always returns a list, but we know that there will only be one item since it has unique ID, paper invasion ID. So you can pass the first item of the list, and here we have the local wallpaper object. And now we just have to set it to the other object which was over here, which is nothing but wallpaper model. Wallpaper model equals local wallpaper model. So when this happens, this won't be null anymore. We will have data inside wallpaper model. And before building, we have to check the title and stuff. So if wallpaper model not equals null, then show this text widget with the title. That's just a normal text. That's it. And we have to do the same thing for the column. If it is null, then we'll show circular progress indicator. And with this, we can query the details. Say, for example, there's an error. Let's give it a restart. It should be fine. So now when I click on this, there is a circular progress indicator coming, but it's not proper. We can make it center, but before that, it's still loading because we haven't called get wallpaper in the init state. So this function is never called, right? So wallpaper model will be null forever. So we will have to call that in init state. So we will call the function get wallpaper, and we have to pass the ID. The ID would be check dot. Oh yeah, we need the previous one also because we will be needing the previous one. Because for the ID at least, we can just say final ID string, or it should be an integer. And we can pass just the ID and nothing else. So we are getting wallpaper model over here, and we are passing the constructor should be initialized. Now we can pass the ID along with the color. So ID would be, so we'll check the wallpaper model .id. So we'll get the ID because we need the ID to query. We don't know which element it is. So it will be widget.id. So we'll be getting the ID from over here and passing it. And also, this circular progress indicator doesn't look good. It's on the left top corner. So let's just wrap it with the center widget. Also not looking good because this shouldn't be over here. This should be outside the single child scroll view. So let's just remove this. Outside the single child scroll view, we can put the circular progress indicator. It would be inside the center widget, and then the child would be circular progress indicator. But this should do it. Then now we have it, and we'll call the init state once again. So as you can see, now it was pretty fast, but it did call this function, and we got a reference and initialized it to wallpaper model, which is defined over here. So then we can access the details from the wallpaper model for all the widgets, which is the text, image, etc. And now comes the fun part. We have to implement the favorites, the favorite star. Before going ahead, we have to check that if the icon is white, or if it is 0 or 1, the value of favorites. So to do that, let's just say wallpaper model dot favorite. If it is equal to 0, then let it be white, or else it will be golden color, right? So we have to identify the difference. Okay, cool. So this will indicate the difference, and also if this is not none, then we show the star. Same logic of title. I'll show just a container. Okay. And now we will be implementing first the update of the favorite status, and then we will render this once again so that we'll get a golden color button over here. Okay, so we'll be writing a function to update the favorite status. The function would not return anything, it would be void. And this is copy paste this, and we can alter it later on. And the function will be update FID, and it will take the ID, of course, to query the database so that we can uniquely identify each record. Now we will be changing this part. We won't be needing this. But instead of query, we will execute the update function. So the update function will take care of table name, its name will be wallpapers, and the values. So the values will be our object, which has. Let's just go back and see. Okay, so we have ID, we need ID, URL, text, and all that. So the ID would be ID, and URL would be, we have the wallpaper model, so it will contain all the data. URL and title, category, and description. And the interesting part here is, now when it comes to favorite, we have to first check if we had the favorite as 0, then we would specify it as 1, right? Or else it will be 0. So this is a ternary operator, it was like a first condition. So if it is 0, then make it 1, else if it is 1, make it 0. That's how it works. It's still giving an error because we have to specify the where clause, and also we cannot initialize to a list of dynamic, a list of map. So we have to use a where clause where id equals question mark and we will pass the id as one of the list items. Yeah, so this should update our favorite, so it will make it as either 1 or 0 depending upon the previous value. And where to call this now? Okay, one more thing is after calling this we have to again call get wallpaper, right? Because we need the new value so that the star will change itself. So at the end of this function, we'll just call await, and this should be id. So we are passing this id, and again we'll call get wallpaper, so it will get us the new wallpaper with the updated value of favorite. And now let's call the favorite inside the star button over here. Okay, the on pressed. Let's say get update favorite with the ID. The ID would be wallpaper model.id. So this will update the value of favorite for us. Let's just test it out once. So I click. As you can see, it instantly changed itself. As you can see again, it made itself as white. So now it's actually changing the value of the favorite status of this object in particular in database as 1 and 0. It's happening back and forth. So that covered the update. And finally, let's just build a favorite list so that we can go through all the favorite items which we have added as favorites. Right? So that's pretty simple. Let's just go to home page and home page app bar. Just add actions as icon button, and this icon would be icon widget, and inside that we need to just put some list type. Let's just do this. There's nothing but let's just consider this as a favorite icon list, and press pressed we'll have the navigator down. Before that, I'll just create a new one. I'll just create a new file in screens. New file. Say this would be a favorite list page. So favorite list page for that. This would be the exact same thing which over here, except the query would be different. So just copy paste this, the home page, and we can replace this home page name. I'll be pressing Ctrl F2 to change all the occurrences to FAV list page. So this would get us all the things, all the items which are added as favorites. So the query would be different over here. So I'll come to that part. So before that, also we have to remove the floating action button. We do not need that in this page. Yeah, now we can do navigator.push from home page. So navigator.push. We need a material page route. And inside that, we need a builder which gets the context and returns FAV list page. So when I click on this, it will take me to the favorite page list. But here, right now, we are querying all the items, but we need to put a where condition in such a way that the favorite status is only 1 and not 0. So to do that, let's just say columns. So we need to query which column, which is named the favorite. So we need to check the favorite column, and what would be the case? The case would be where FAV equals 1, right? So if it is included as favorites, then only display those objects or else do not. So that's how it would work. Let's just test it out once. So now it shows empty list because this is not a favorite. So I'll add it as my favorite and I'll go back and now I'll query it once again. There's an error. URL is null, it says. Okay, I made a mistake, my bad. So columns is actually not related to the querying, but it specifies which column it must return from the result. Say, for example, if you indicate only favorite, it will only get you the favorite. See, for example, it will get you array of favorites. It won't get you the whole record. So we don't need this because we need all the items. So all the columns we need. So this will work now. So when I just go and click on this, as you can see, it went ahead and queried the database. So for demonstrating this, again, I'll just add a few more items so that we can play with this a little more. So here I have added a few of the wallpapers. And now if we go to favorites list, there's only one, which is a tree. And if I remove that and go to favorites list, there would be nothing, right? And now if I say add blue rose, and then I will open that and I'll have this. Okay, we forgot to change the app bar title of this. So let's just do that. So it will be favorites and now it did not change. The hot title was missing. Now it has changed. Okay, cool. So here we have the rows. If I remove that and row, it will be empty. Whereas if I can add tree as my favorite wallpaper as well as cloud as my favorite wallpaper. If I go and check, there are two. And if I delete this tree, it's gone from here as well as from our favorites. So that is it for this tutorial, guys. Hope you learned something new and enjoyed along the way. That concluded all the CRUD operations we had, and this was just a small scale app, so I did not include any state management architecture. But if you are working on a bit complicated app, you should probably go ahead and consider one of the state management architectures along with SQLite. Thank you for watching, guys, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.